think it was like the stadium.
Every time I see like Amy Williams stomp across the floor in her high heels, I know that would never be allowed in my high school gym, but I'm just like, oh well, whatever. You know, they use a better finish. You know, and then I see this, and I think this is like what my high school was like.
Do you, Christina?
Circina, you don't have to say her name.
Okay.
That's fine. She's. But yes, I
Circina.
have one. I have a spouse.
And I don't
And
have to.
it's Circina.
Circina.
Yeah, it's the typical Frisian pronunciation.
Okay.
My mom's like, "What is that?" I'm like, "It's Frisian." Don't let that go. You've never heard of it. You have no idea where it is. Yes. Yeah. Okay, great.
I got that in there. Okay. All right. It's supposed to be offered Zoom too, so I think.
So my mother was a school teacher. She was music, and then I was a for ed and elementary. So I had two elementary principals sitting across from me. And what have you been doing? She's like, oh, no, she would have worked there. I'm like, you're 77 years old. What do you mean? She's still being called in to sub as principal. And she told us when she went to the school, and she'd been to school before, and she says, I'm not sub as principal. I'm sub as assistant principal. You're the assistant principal. You do it. Have it go. She said, no, like I've been in a coaching place with her for, a couple of years now. But every time they call me, yeah. She goes, well, you're the leader. She's like, no. I am your assistant. Yeah, I don't care what
Okay.
people do. Really, really. You're glad to get paid for subbing as a principal, but yeah, in the end, yeah, yeah.
Hello. It's a little after 12, so I think we'll get started, if that's all right with everyone. I'm happy to see everyone attend this first celebration of International Women's Day at Southeast Community College. I'm Carla Angstrom, an adjunct instructor who's been teaching American Sign Language at the college for 20 years. This year's IWD theme is to embrace equity, so gender equity becomes part of every society's DNA. You may ask yourself, what's the difference between equity and equality? Why is it important to understand and value the answer to this question? The IWD 2023 Embrace Equity campaign seeks to get the world talking about why equal opportunities are no longer enough and can be exclusionary and not inclusionary. Equity can be defined as giving everyone what they need to be successful. It doesn't mean giving everyone the exact same thing. If we gave everyone the same thing and expected that would make people equal, that means everyone started at the same place. This assumption is vastly inaccurate. We don't all start at the same place. Here, right now, is a quick pictorial view to help understand the difference between equity and equality. Equity focuses on providing all genders with equality focuses on providing all genders with equal opportunities, such as a woman's right to vote. Yet women often require more than a level playing field. They need to belong to a global culture that actively promotes and supports them in all aspects of their life, from education and the workplace to health. Gender is intersectional, and women as a group are truly diverse. Policies that benefit white women, for example, may not benefit women of color due to historical or current inequities. A shift from gender equality to the process of gender equity is required for meaningful purposes and progress. So make it your mission to educate friends, families, colleagues, and the community on the need for equity. If you truly believe in forging an equal and inclusive world, then you will truly believe in the need for the world to better understand the difference between equity and equality. Let's all embrace equity together. It is now my honor to introduce our speakers for the afternoon, Sandra Washington and Michelle Suarez. Our first speaker, Sandra Washington, originally came from Columbus, Ohio, and has lived in Lincoln since 1990. Sandra worked with the National Park Service for 25 years, retiring in 2014 as the Association Regional Director for Cultural Resources, Planning, Construction, Communications, Legislation, and Congressional Affairs. Sandra currently sits on the board of the Nebraska Trails Foundation and the National Parks Conservation Association. She attended Ohio State University for both undergraduate and graduate school, and she is a lifetime member of the Girl Scouts USA. Please now give a very warm welcome to Sandra Washington.
Thank you very much, Carla. It's my pleasure to be with you today for International Women's Day. Years ago, I used to celebrate International Women's Day, or at least recognize it on a more regular basis, and it's been a number of years, but I am really pleased to have the opportunity to dig back a little bit into the history of Women's Day and to think back on some of my experiences on this day a while ago. As Professor Engstrom has said, I am a council person here in Lincoln, Nebraska. I live here in Lincoln. I've been here for a long time. More than half of my life has been in Lincoln. So really, Lincoln is my new hometown. I had a hometown, my first hometown. But when you live someplace for a long time, you end up being from that place. And this is the place that I call home. As was in my introduction, it was said that I worked for the National Park Service, which I did for a number of years, and it gave me a wonderful, broad education in history. I am really a scientist, and I thought my whole life would be dedicated to plants and animals and ecosystems and ecology and the out of doors, and I found myself immersed in experiences where I had to understand context. Not just natural context, but historical context and social context. And as a person who has studied and worked in the field of planning, it's important always to know the context. So one of the national park units that I had a chance to spend a great deal of time at is Women's Rights in Seneca Falls, New York. And so I'm just going to reflect a little bit. I won't get all nerd on you about the history. But when we think about women in history and women in history here in the United States, and we all know that the Declaration of Independence says all of us are created equal. And sometime in the late 1840s, a couple of women got together with a couple hundred women and said, you know, we really should have a convention for women. And we should be talking and pushing for our suffrage, our right to vote, and our right for equality, that we can own property, that we can work for ourselves and we can work for others. And so they came together and they said, let's talk about this. And they did this in Seneca Falls. And a few years later, they had another women's convention where Sojourner Truth, and I'm sure you've heard of Sojourner Truth, spoke. And she spoke the speech, "Ain't I a Woman?" because she was talking about the intersection between race and gender. And she said, you know, white women, and the epitome of women here in the United States is that women need to be helped a lot. They need to be set on pedestals. They need to be lifted in and out of carriages because, I don't know, they lack the mobility. I'm not sure. But so it's a lot of chivalry, which I like, but there was a sort of a diminishment of women, but they were really only looking at women of privilege and saying, well, if you're a woman of privilege, you need to be helped in and out of a carriage over a mud puddle or a ditch or something like that. And Sojourner Truth said, I have muscles and I can work as hard as any man, ain't I a woman? So she was making certain that people understood that it wasn't just women of privilege who were women, but women came in all different ways and all different experiences. And so when Professor Engstrom talks about the intersectionality of women's experiences and Women's Day and equity, she speaks the truth. I want to also bring it a little bit more locally, or I want to bring it along the historical line. One of the women who I have admired, not because I aspire to be like her, is a woman who was incredibly brave and mouthy, Eleanor Roosevelt. She stood up for women when it wasn't very popular, and she acted each and every time she walked into a room like she belonged in that room. She never apologized for being simply the First Lady. She just took her space and she made things happen. She was invited to speak at the inaugural session of the United Nations, and this is just after World War II. It's the mid-40s. And in her speech, she said, this is an open letter to the women of the world. Become more involved in national and international events and affairs. Take an active role in the work of peace and reconstruction. Well, the context of that is it's just after World War II. I'm going to take what she said about peace and reconstruction and talk a little bit about where we are today. Our work right now is not directly in peace or after wartime efforts, but it is still to talk about peace and to talk about equity and to build, instead of reconstructing Europe after World War II, our work today is to build a community where each of us belong, no matter what. Whether or not we were born here, whether or not we are male or female, whether or not we are of any race or any gender, actually. And so the work of equity is something that spurs me on. Let me tell you a little bit about a project that I'm beginning to work on in my role as a council person. I ran, and this isn't a political statement, but I ran on the idea that everyone deserved a seat at the table, and that if the table was too small, we just make the table bigger. I never believed that there was only a certain size pie and only so many pieces. I figured that how we live, our world, we can create a world where the pie is huge and there's enough to go around. And so it's not just dividing up a certain sum of things, but to say, we can make this place bigger, we can make the table bigger. Everyone deserves to have their voices heard. And, but it's important that we operationalize it. And most people get stuck trying to think about equity and equality and anti-racism work and anti-sexism work, and then they go, yeah, I'm all for that, but I don't know where to start. Well, this is where my nature nerd comes back around to show us a way. Environmental analysis is where I started my work with the National Park Service, and it's where what I studied intensely. And so when I looked at how we analyzed this, I thought, why don't we just put an analysis tool, an environmental analysis tool on equity? Let's figure out if we can use data as a starting point and build from there. And so this is what I and a couple other folks down at City Hall have been working on, how to operationalize equity by including these 5 questions or this process in all of the decisions that are made in every department and at City Council when we're looking at our funding and how we distribute dollars. What's the data say? So what's our current condition? If we're going to build something better into the future, how do we measure success? Who benefits from the decision we're getting ready to make or the program we're getting ready to start, and who is burdened? How will the people who are most impacted by the decision or the program be involved in the process of making the decision? And then how do we monitor and mitigate any adverse impacts? Because every decision has some unintended consequences. Most of them are adverse. Some of them are positive, but most of them are adverse. So how are we going to keep our eye on what we intended and what we did not intend, and how do we mitigate those things? So let me give you an example. I get very involved in parks, of course. It's my background. And so we looked at, initially, we were looking at a racket sports survey in the Parks and Rec Department. And that means tennis and pickleball, primarily. And they opened up a survey online, which is something that they do frequently, and they pushed it out. And they said, please, answer these questions. We want to know what Lincoln thinks about racket sports. And I typed in, because I thought, I'm going to answer the survey. And it first said, do you play tennis or pickleball now? And I answered no. And it said, thank you for your participation, and dropped the link. I was like, wait a second, I want to answer the whole survey. And they said, and I said, oh, okay, wait a second. So I went and talked with Parks and Rec, and they said, that's what it does? And I said, yeah, it's a dichotomous thing. If you say no, it says goodbye. If you say yes, and they said, oh, we should open that up. And I said, please do. So they made a change because they realized that people who weren't already involved couldn't have a voice in the decision, and that the only way to make this an equitable thing was to say, wait, everyone gets to complete the whole survey. So that was the first step. It was like, find that hurdle, jump up, clear the hurdle, now let everybody answer. So then I got to finish up the survey. And so we took all that survey information, and they said, well, what should we do with this? Let's see where we know where people are. We know where people play racket sports. We know what people don't play but are interested in learning about it. Let's put this into a GIS database and make a picture of it. And then let's talk about where we place pickleball courts in Lincoln and where we have a greater need for tennis or a greater need or interest in pickleball. And then when we did that, I said, now let's look and make certain that we have got all quadrants of the city covered, that we don't leave pickleball out, and let's dig down a little deeper. And that's the kind of work that I'm talking about in operationalizing equity, making certain that everyone has a voice in the process, who wants a voice in the process, and then making certain that things are equitably distributed, looking at what we have today, and look at what we want in the future. And then if we find that we've made a mistake or something that we've done has created some kind of adverse impact, find a way to correct it. And it's the same in having conversations with folks. You make a mistake, you just apologize and keep right on going. Make it a sincere apology. Try not to do it again, and pick up and keep going. Because, I don't believe in wallowing in guilt. It doesn't get us anywhere. The cartoon drawing of equity that Carla showed of the bicycles of different sizes, that everyone had the bicycle that fit them, not just the same exact bicycle. When I think about equity and I think about the journey that we're on, that each of us have a long ways to go, that we started in our own different places and we're all trying to get to the end of our own journey, and we want to be successful and we want to have a life that is vibrant and meaningful. I think about long-distance running. My father was a runner, my brother was a runner, my sister and I, we all ran through high school. My father and brother ran through college. But I think about how when I was running short distances, we all started at exactly the same place, and the finish line was exactly the same place, 100. And when I started to run middle distance, and it took me a while, I mean, I was younger, I would watch middle distance and I would think, Dad, why aren't they all starting at the same exact place? And he says, well, they kind of are. And I'm like, I don't get it. Why does one runner line up 40 yards in front of another runner, 40 meters? Oh, I just aged myself. Why don't we all just start at the same line? And he says, well, by the time we go around the circle, we end up in different places. The finish line would have to be staggered, and so it's important that we all just start out where we are. And I'm like, oh, so we just stagger the start. He says, yep, just like life. My father was, just like life, we stagger the start, but we're all going to end up in a place that is vibrant, a place of belonging. And so I think about that when I'm thinking about equity. And with that, I will answer questions later, but I wanted to thank you and thank Carla for inviting me here today. I think this is something that we should all celebrate, not just today, but every day. Let's embrace equity.
Thank you, Sandra. That was very enlightening. We're going to have one more speaker, and after the speakers, we will be having a Q&A session, and then we will be treated to the Lincoln International Folk Dancers. And also, there are international candies on the table, so feel free to help you celebrate today. Now, our second speaker is Michelle Suarez, who was appointed to the Lincoln City Council on January 9th, 2023. She represents residents of District 3. Michelle served the community as a public school teacher and administrator for 34 years. She then worked as an early childhood advocate for Prosper Lincoln Community Initiative. Her master's and bachelor's degrees are from the University of Nebraska here in Lincoln. Please give a warm welcome to Michelle.
Well, thank you very much, Carla. And you can see why I would be honored to join this Lincoln City Council when I get the chance to work with people like Sandra Washington. She is a role model to me, certainly, and I just really appreciate her thoughtful words, and so thank you, Sandra. When Carla asked if I would be willing to join this celebration to talk about leadership, particularly in the Latino culture, I immediately thought yes, because when I think about leadership in the Mexican-American culture that I came from, I was surrounded by strong women. So it was real natural. And I thought of, okay, who is the leader in our community? Who are leaders? Well, it's our moms and our grandmas. And so I'm excited to talk to you a little bit about my own personal history, as well as the history of other people that I'm aware of. So first of all, I just have a picture. I know you can't see it, but you see there's lots of people, right? So my mom and dad, and my brothers and sisters. And I want to talk just a little bit about how education is so important as we think about leadership. It's important that we are able to come from a place, wherever we start, that we can continue to grow and prosper as we make that journey. I'm from Scottsbluff, Nebraska originally, and grew up in a small Mexican-American community in about a 500-square-foot house. And all I knew was love and really, in a sense, leadership through the community, through our church, just through education. We were always encouraged to do our best and in lots of unspoken ways. So all of my brothers and sisters all attended college. 5 of us graduated. One did not, but he's the most financially successful. That's okay, I guess. So the rest of us really devoted our lives to education in one way or another. So another picture of my husband's family, and there's this one little woman in the center. Her name's Adela Suarez. She bore 10 children, and they all graduated from high school, and many went on to graduate from college. And I think about the tremendous courage and the hard work that she invested in this family to allow her children to go on and be leaders in other areas. So she talked about her day And let's think about the daily life in her life. So she woke up at 4 a.m. to make breakfast for the family, and she made always homemade tortillas. She packed the lunch for the day. She'd go out with her family to work in the fields, in the migrant farm fields. She bore the children. She took care of the children, come home, make supper, make sure that everything's where it needs to be, do the laundry on a washboard, laundry, I guess, setup, clean up, get the kids to bed, fall asleep exhausted at midnight. So for those of you who are counting, that's 4 hours of sleep a night. And then to do that for decades. It's just incredible to think that that's what people were willing to do to inspire children, her own children, certainly, but to succeed and to be leaders in the community. And I could talk individually about the individual leadership that each family member provides, but not at this point. I think of my grandmother, and my grandparents were in the migrant farm worker stream, and my grandfather told my grandmother at one point, it's time to move to the next location, we're heading north, and she had the courage to say, no, I think I'll just stay in Minnetonka, Nebraska. I'm not moving, I'm gonna stay here. And so the family stayed, my grandfather too, so that was a good point. But also sometimes the courage to say yes. My father and his brother wanted to work in other jobs outside of the migrant farm field area. And my grandfather said, no, they need to work in the fields, contribute to the family. And my grandmother said, well, and no, but yes, they can work where they want to work. Because, so just that leadership in a quiet way in my family and in my husband's family. And those are the families I'm most familiar with. I also had the opportunity to work with mothers in the family literacy program at Everett Elementary School. And this is a program where parents come for 2 hours a day to learn English and to get to know the community better, to provide a support system to each other. And when I think about the courage that they displayed, they had jobs working late into the night sometimes, very little sleep. They came each morning to invest in their family so that their children could have a better life. But I saw struggles, hardships, but they came to the country for their children, and they're willing to do just about anything to help their children succeed. I just want to turn to a minute to talk about local and state leadership. There is an organization called Las Voces, and the mission is to advocate and inspire positive change in the Latino Hispanic community of Nebraska by addressing social justice issues through leadership, civic engagement, and collaboration. And so I know I've become acquainted with people through that organization, and one of them is your very own Amanda Varon, who's here, Southeast Community College's Associate Dean of Arts and Science, and there she is. She's waving out in the yeah. So thank you for your leadership. So in addition to her daytime job, she invests hours and hours of time to lead this organization and to inspire change in our young people. Olga Kani is another person involved in that work, Rebecca Gonzalez. Think of the bilingual liaisons who serve the community, such as Elizabeth Montes. And also we have Latino student advocates at Lincoln Public Schools, Stephanie Ruiz and Melissa Moreno. So just think of all the leadership in families, in community that really impact our community. And then of course, national leadership, Dolores Huerta, she created the United Farm Workers in 1965, an organization that works tirelessly to improve the working conditions for farm workers, leading legislation that protects some of the most vulnerable people in our society. Cesar Chavez gets a lot of recognition for the work, but Dolores Huerta is just just the person who really made things continue. I mean, she's just critical person, and doesn't always get the recognition that she deserves. Of course, Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor, she's the first Latina Supreme Court Justice in U.S. history, working tirelessly to be a voice for women and people of color in criminal justice reform in all kinds of areas. Ellen Ochoa, astronaut, first Latina in the world to go into space on the Discovery Shuttle, and the first Latina director of the Johnson Space Center in Houston. And many, many others in all areas. They're blazing a trail to impact and support future generations. And so sometimes leadership happens quietly in a family through determination, vision, incredibly hard work, and sometimes it unfolds in national arenas. It's all important. So I urge you to recognize and support women's leadership, and especially leadership from women of color in your own community. If you're a student, or actually if you're anybody, say yes to leadership opportunities, say yes to learning opportunities, Sandra talked about building community. And when you say yes to your own learning opportunities and leadership, you're building community. And I just want to leave with one quote. It's about courage, which I believe is very important in leadership. Courage does not always roar. Sometimes courage is the quiet voice at the end of the day saying, I will try again tomorrow. And that was Mary Ann Radmacher, writer and artist, who said that. And that's what I think when I think of leadership and women that I know and know of. It's that just, I'm going to keep trying, keep striving, and I encourage you to do the same. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Michelle. That really was inspiring. Thank you. And we now have time for our Q&A session, which is going to be handled by Kara Benedict, who is a communication instructor and co-chair of the humanities, and also Spanish instructor Mariana Ayala. So they have microphones, and if you put your hand up, we'll try and get one to you if you have a question. And then after that, we will also have our Lincoln International folk dancers perform for you. So. Okay, there. You need more.
So there are two ways that you can ask questions. You can go to pauleve.com or text, or you can always ask right here. We can just hand you the microphone. Or it's up to you. You can just. Does anybody have any questions for our speakers? Okay.
Okay, sure. How important do you think it is that we get involved in the current mayor election, and how can we get involved and help, and what's at stake?
Okay, I'm going to answer that question generically. I think it's incredibly important that everyone vote. And so if you're not registered to vote, register to vote. There's still time. I don't really care how someone votes. Of course I do, but I'm not going to tell you that I care which direction. I just care that people vote, because voting is how you get engaged. And it shows that you care, that you have an investment in the community, and it's the only way that your voice can be heard on election day is by voting. And so no matter what lever you pull or button you push, vote.
I would also just add that it's important to think about your own values and how they match up with the candidates. So I also agree that voting is the first place to start. But there's also other opportunities to support whichever candidate you support. But again, it goes back to me, values, and then exercising the right to vote and further your values by choosing the person that best matches that.
Hello. Thank you for coming. So I'm kind of in the same situation as you. Like, my mom came from Iraq refugee camp, and she has 7 kids, and she brought us all here, and we were there for 4 years. So I get what you're saying. It's like she had 4 older sons, and she was like the figure for us, so she can tell us, to do the right things, but it kind of leaves it up to us. But long story short, now we see like groups of people just getting, like Hispanics, African Americans, white people, Arabs. How important do you think is to challenge everybody just to look at that individual that did something right or wrong and not put the whole group in there? say, like, for instance, if a Middle Eastern guy does something wrong in the news, puts it on blast, how important do you think it is everybody kind of challenges themselves not to put the whole group of Muslims, Christians, Catholics, whatnot, and just blame that one person and just kind of take that with what it is, and not just blame a whole group and hate that group or love that group. I guess my question is, like, how would you pass that message to let everybody know, like, just challenge yourself to not do that, if that makes sense?
Yes, it entirely does. And I think of, again, back to values and leadership. And so it's important for all of us to spread that message that each person's voice matters. And as Sandra said, that we need to enlarge that table so we have everyone have the opportunity to come to the table, but also to be seen as an individual with unique histories and experiences, and that we do see people as individuals. But the tendency is to see people as groups. And so when somebody looks at you or Sandra or me or anybody in the audience, we make judgments based on skin color, hair color, eye color, size, and a variety of experiences, what you're wearing, how you dress. So it's important that we stop and slow down and see people as individual people. But there'll always be that tendency to see people as groups. And so regardless of how you view yourself, others will judge and view. And human nature, but we have to educate ourselves to know that we come as individuals and other people come as individuals. So that's just my comment.
I like that. It is about walking the walk, not just talking it. And I believe we do that by modeling. And when I am in a situation where I am emotionally involved, like emotions are heightened, whether it's anxiety or fear or anger, our ability to process a lot drops. We diminish our own abilities when we're overwrought by emotion. And that's the exact moment where I have to tell myself, take a breath, whether it's deep or shallow, take a breath and be present. The person in front of me is a person, a human, an individual. Focus on the present, be present. And it helps me to not group, and it helps me not to react with a knee-jerk reaction that isn't gonna serve me or the other person in that moment. So I try very hard to be present and tell the truth. Be authentic. I mean, tell the truth doesn't mean like not telling lies. It means be authentic. Like just be truthful, and just sort of trust that we can get past the moment we're in.
Another question we have here is, in your view, what are some of the most effective ways to raise awareness and advocate for women's rights on International Women's Day and beyond?
Tell a young person that they can do it. Encourage a young girl that she can do anything she wants. She can dream anything she wants. And encourage a young boy that he can do anything that he wants. I think the best way to think about International Women's Day is knowing that we all get to make our own choices. We all get to be whoever it is we want to be. There are millions of ways to be a woman, and there are millions of ways to be a man. And if we support each other in whatever path we choose, I think others see it and they embrace the full range of opportunities for themselves.
And I would just add, joining in, standing up for yourself and being a model for others. And so just a few short months ago, I didn't have any vision of being on the city council, but I was invited to consider it, to apply. And I thought, well, I'll just apply because it's important that we stand up and come to the table at least. Whether we're invited in or not, it's still important to come to the table. And then joining the table, I look back and say, well, of course I should have come to the table, but that wasn't my initial vision. So it's about standing up for what you believe and then helping others to see that path by modeling, by showing up, by doing the work.
And we have another question. How can individuals, organizations, and governments work together to advance gender equality and support women's rights?
What I had mentioned while I was speaking about the equity framework that we're building in Lincoln and the city government, to making certain that we spread equity, we operationalize equity by making certain we know that we've included voices in decision-making who will be most impacted by the decision is important. And that's a long way to say, make sure that you've invited everyone to the table and you give people a voice, that we look at the programs that we're trying to implement or the decisions we're making and making certain we know why are we doing this program? Does this help to foster equity? Will this move equity forward in Lincoln? And looking really at what women need, different than what men might need. One of the biggest discussion points of last year's budget for the city was the program in the health department to provide nurse visits to every newborn in Lincoln and Lancaster County, and to give every newborn a chance to have a registered nurse visit with their mom or their mom and their dad, their parents and the newborn for at least 3 visits. And that was a really, it was a tougher decision than I thought it would be. I thought everyone would say, of course, women who've just given birth deserve someone coming in and saying, are you doing okay? Do you have all the resources you need? Do you have any questions? Are you just exhausted and you want someone to like sit here with you for an hour? And then we'll come, and then we promise we'll come back and we'll sit with you, or we'll provide you resources or information the next time we visit. But we'll also do well checks on your baby, because it doesn't, though income has something to do with it, income is not all of the struggles and the challenges that new mothers have. And the way to level the playing field on this one is to make certain that every woman, regardless of income, has an opportunity for those newborn visits, because that raises the health level of all newborns. And when newborn children have a healthy start, they do better in school. And if they do better in school, they do better in life. And that's what we're trying to do.
Thank you. When I read in the paper about this newborn visit, I was really excited, thinking about this is what local government can do. It can really impact the lives of children and mothers, and of course fathers as well. So I was so excited to see that, and again, it was a struggle, but it comes down to what's important, right? I would also urge people to recognize the leadership in themselves, recognize the leadership in women, that often quiet, unspoken determination that mothers and grandmothers and you yourselves bring to the table. Examine and push back against systems that do not support equity, and there are many systems in our country that really fight against that. So we have to examine which systems support equity and which do not, and then push back against those that do not, and support the systems, or create, sometimes it's even creating systems that better support women, because my thought is that we need everyone. We have no disposable people. We have to encourage everyone to succeed and be the best they can be. We all matter. Each of you matter. And so we have to invest in each person's development, which is why what the City Council passed was so instrumentally important.
We have another question here. How would you recommend encouraging fellow women of color to speak up? In my community, I see a lot of women not speak up due to misogyny.
Well, it certainly does take courage to come to the table, to join the table. And I've seen that over time in my life and in the lives, again, of other people that I'm familiar with. And I guess I would encourage people to think deeply again. It goes back to values. If an activity or an event aligns with your values, then I think you really can find the courage to make an impact there. So I would just ask people to think about who they are, what they value, and then what action they can take to impact the organization or the situation. But it really comes down to making a commitment to further equity, to further equitable systems in our country, in our city. But it takes courage, and sometimes you just have to show up and go from there.
And I'd add that no action is too small. If you're feeling like you don't have a large voice or you don't have a place where you can make a big stand, or that's just not who you are, make a small action. Whether it's speaking up for yourself and wanting to further your education, try something new, venture a little further out from home, or you want to encourage your child, a young friend, a niece, your younger siblings, to do something. Find your voice to do the small thing, and once you've done that small thing, you'll have more courage to do the next thing and the next thing. So don't push yourself further than you're comfortable to begin with. Find a way and make a small step.
Okay, thank you. We're out of time when it comes to the questions.
Okay. We were going to have a third speaker, but Lindy Christensen Nader couldn't be here with us. And she is an SCC sociology instructor and also works on the Women's Foundation of Lincoln Lancaster County and the Mayor's Commission on Women and Gender. And she is working with a survey, and we would like to ask you to consider filling out that survey. And it is, you go to www.lincolnwomen.org, and you can fill that out, if you would, please. And we can hopefully continue taking the pulse of people in Lincoln. And now I have to tell you that it is my honor to introduce Svetlana Yashirin, who has been teaching music and humanities at SCC for 20 years. Svetlana will introduce the Lincoln International Folk Dancers, and they are going to provide us with a visual and audio treat. Thank you all so very much for joining us. And afterwards, I think I would like to thank everybody. Should I do that first? Or just wait? Okay, I'll wait.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming. And just a few words, because I'm teaching music here, and there's one class that is called World Music, and this class is surveying music from all parts, like from all Americas, like North, South, Latin, Central Africa, Australia, Asia, all parts. And of course, it's a very brief survey, but it is studying folk music, their traditions, their instruments, their songs. And even though there are so many parts in the world that doing this, and they are all different, but they all have in common that these dances and songs, they instill in those who participate or those who watch love for family and community, and where they get that strength, okay, for their life. And so this is very interesting. So I really, when we dance, we feel that strength, right? And it is, so everyone is invited to find more about our group. But two more words about our group. You won't believe it. It was founded in the 50s. So if in the 50s it's like 7 decades, it is. So there were different generations, and I'm so happy that this group is still alive. And I think you will see in our 4 examples of dances that it is about community, and we will talk about each dance. And so the first dance will be described by Eva.
First dance is from Serbia. It's called Shetnja, and it's an open circle dance. And the words from it are say to people, come and check out the paradise that we are in.
All right, our next. This dance, Omayu Mayu, is from Ukraine. And we have, as you see, we have different costumes everyone is wearing. So, like, my costume is Ukrainian. Linda's costume is Ukrainian. Right, so we have from Bulgarian. Okay, I will not take. I want to say a few words about the dance and about the song, because you'll hear this song, and it's called Omayu Mayu. And I think it is a humorous kind of song, because I think it is a young girl that is approaching courtship age, and she's worrying about if there will be a guy for her, and she's saying, Mom, you see, I have eyes, but no one to look at. And then, Mom, I have arms, but no one to embrace. Mom, I also have legs and feet, but no one to go to dance with. So it is like that. All right, enjoy this.
Our third dance is from Israel. Most of the Israeli dances have been created since Israel was founded in 1947, 48. This one was choreographed in 1965, and it's called Sadi Katimar. The language is based on Psalm 92, which means righteous as a palm tree.
Our last dance is Horonsky Chardash from Slovakia, and it's a woman's dance about a girl who sees boys she doesn't like, but across the river is her love, the Danube. very easy dance. We want audience participation. Very easy, super easy. Just walk to the right, walk to the left. It's coming from Bolivia. Bolivia and speakers too, yes. Yes, yes.
Now, there's two really challenging parts of this dance. You have to count to three, and you have to know which way is right. Now, I'm dyslexic, so I have a hard time with this. I want to know it's that one. What I'd like to do is get two lines facing one another. You'll have a partner opposite.
Sure.
Visually, it's going to be counterintuitive. You're going to go to your own right. So this line is going that way. That line is going that way first. The object of this dance, unlike most dances, is to have fun. Actually, all dances have fun. Make contact both visually and physically if you want to with your partner. I'm not saying run into them, but there'll be a card where you'll have an opportunity to slap hands. You can either slap hands. Now be gentle. Some of us are very tender, but just through the nonverbal, decide what you want to do. First part, to your own right, 3 steps. 1, 2, 3. Snap your fingers up high. Go back to the left, 3 steps. 1, 2, 3. Clap, not move. We want to do that one more time. 1, 2, 3. Snap, back, 2, 3. Clap. Now here's your opportunity to engage with your partner. 3 steps towards one another, and you can either snap, clap by yourself, or clap your partner. So it's 1, 2, 3. Clap, back up, 2, 3. Clap down low. 1, 2, 3. Clap, back, 2, 3. Down low. Now my professional dancer in here are going to show you the next part. We're going to go 1, 2, 3 and face each other. 1, 2, 3. And then we're going to take each other twice. 1, 2, 3. And that is the whole dance. So let's do the whole. So that's where remember to your own right first is important because you're going to be on the opposite side. Right is going to be the other way. And that tends to confuse me sometimes. Going to do the whole thing real quick. To your right. 1, 2, 3. Snap, back, 2, 3. Snap. 1, 2, 3. Snap, back, 2, 3. Together, 2, 3. Snap, back, 2, 3. Snap, 2, 3. Now we're going to trade sides. 1, 2, 3. Look. 1, 2, 3. To the right. 2, 3. Snap, back, 2, 3. Now, I have a bad habit. I like to clap high and low because it makes more noise. Do whatever you want. Another thing, this is not the best floor for turning. But if you want to, you can turn, 2, 3, snap, turn, 2, 3, clap. So like I said, if you don't have really good ankles, I would not recommend it on this floor. This dance is called Chili Lee, and it's not the food you eat, but it sounds kind of like it. It's from Bolivia. does not make a lot of sense, but there's a story behind it. A lot of us picked it up while we were in college, some of it through family or friends. I have danced literally all over the world. Every place I dance, I'm all over. And I don't understand the words of 90% of the dances we do, but I enjoy the music. And in some cases, it can be a very good opportunity to learn culture, because dances reflect culture. There are some dances where I would never touch a female who was not my spouse's sister. Whereas there's other dances where we would be buddy-buddy and we just dance one dance. So it's also a good way to learn culture and to learn. Another thing that's not well known is a lot of the Eastern European folk dances were preserved by women. After World War II, the male population was pretty much decimated in some regions. And when ethnographers already went in to study the traditional village dances, it was the women that had preserved the dance. And some of them involved, some of the dances would involve parts. But that's, something to take pride in. In some cases, it's the women that preserve the culture, if that helps your understanding.
But I just wanted to say thank you for having us here because it got us back together. We hadn't really danced during COVID time and just came back together very recently. So if we looked just a tad rusty, we're working on it. We're working up to speed.
And this is called international folk dancing. It's not international professional dancing. So you'll notice that some of us slipped up a little bit, but you know what? That's because we just love being together. And that means that anybody, please, can join us. It's great. It's awesome. There are international folk events all over the country. Some of us have been to many of them, and they are amazing. So it's a great thing to get into. We'll make a way to make sure you all know where we're meeting and when we're practicing so you can join us. So.
As everybody's leaving,